So, I designed a secret underground city for my manga. And I could have just put it in and kept moving. A lot of mangas do that. Things just exist and nobody really questions it. Cursed energy comes from negative emotions and JJK. I love those series. But if you actually ask how any of that works, there's no real answer. It just does. I did not want to do that with my world. I wanted there to be an actual reason for the underground city to exist. Not something super scientific, but something that made sense if you thought about it for a second. And figuring that out kind of spiraled into a whole thing, which is what this video is about. I'm also going to show you what this city looks like, because I did spend a lot of time on this project and I think it did come out pretty well. Let's get into it. So first, what even is the underground city? The idea was pretty simple. There's a massive hollow space underneath the ground, and inside the space there's an entire city. People have been living there for centuries. Nobody on the surface knows it exists. That was the concept. Clean, easy, and it looked cool. But the moment I started thinking about it, I ran into a problem. What was holding up this hollow space? Underground spaces don't really just exist on their own. They collapse. That's kind of what they do. So I needed some explanation for why this particular space had not collapsed. Now, before you think I'm one of those world builders with a 90-page document on the weather patterns of a village my character walks through once, I'm not. I do not have patience for that. I just wanted the stuff that actually matters in the story to make sense. The underground city matters. So I needed a reason for it to be there. This is how I figured it out. My first idea was water. What if the layer does not float because of just like air? It floats because it is full of water, like a giant sponge. The pressure of the water trapped inside the rock pushes outwards in every direction, including upwards. That was the upwards force, which was keeping the layers suspended. Is that real physics? I mean, loosely, hydraulic pressure is a thing, right? The specifics here are not real, but in manga, loosely real is basically a scientific paper. One problem: if the rock layer is full of water and the city is inside the rock layer, the city is underwater. My characters cannot live underwater. They're not fish. I had built a very convincing explanation for a city that nobody gets to live in, except for maybe fish. Fish city. So, what if you drain it? The rocks stay buoyant because the water in the walls and surrounding stone. But the hollow space inside, the actual cavity where the city sits, you pump the water out. Now the walls are still saturated, the layers still float, but the interior is dry. People can live there. But there's a new problem, and this one accidentally made the story better. The water doesn't stay gone. The walls are saturated. Cracks form over time. Water seeps back in. Unless someone is actively stopping it, the interior will fill back up. So the city needs pumps, a drainage system, workers whose only job is making sure water stays out. If the pumps fail, the city floods. If someone sabotages the drainage, people will die. That's not just a logistic detail, that's a power structure. Whoever controls the pumps control whether everyone makes it to tomorrow or not. That's corruption. That's the reason two factions might be at war. I was trying to explain a floating rock, and I accidentally built the entire social hierarchy of a hidden civilization. But there's still one more thing I had not solved. The hollow space was originally filled with water, but how did anyone build there in the first place? The answer I came up with sounds insane, but stay with me. You build the city while it's still underwater. Don't ask me how, that's what they do. Workers go down into the flooded space, construct foundations and supports while it's still submerged. This is actually something that has been done in real engineering. The script says caissons, cofferdams, pressurized work chambers. Don't know what those are, but they're real technique, just scaled up way beyond what is realistic, which technically makes them not realistic, but this is not real life, so we'll let it slide. Once the structures are sealed, they pump the water out from inside, and then gradually drain the surrounding space, and the city just appears as the water level drops, like the opposite of Atlantis, if you know what that is. The thing I liked about this is what it implies about the people who built it. What kind of construction would take generations, enormous resources, a level of commitment that tells you these people really, really needed not to be found. And that raises a question I have not fully answered yet in my story. Who were they hiding from, and what happened to them? The people living in the city now, do they even know their own history? That ended up being one of the more interesting parts of the world for me to think about, all from trying to explain a floating rock. Okay, so now the actual design, because this is the part that took me 3 days, and I want to show off a little. If you're enjoying this video, go ahead and subscribe, it helps me out a lot. Anyway, for the entrances, I wanted these 5 openings in the ceiling of the hollow space arranged kind of like a clover, not wide or obvious, narrow passages that you'd only really find if you already knew where they were, or if you stumbled in accidentally. For the city itself, I didn't want it to look planned or organized. The people who built this were hiding. They were not thinking about city planning or making things look nice. They were building whatever they needed, whenever they needed it, across multiple generations, so nothing really matches. Different building styles from different eras, all crammed together. Different heights, different materials. It kind of looks like a real city got compressed and stuffed into a wet cave and then was drained. And then the part I'm most happy with. Some buildings are not on the ground at all. They're suspended from the ceiling by ropes, with rope bridges connecting them to each other and the buildings below. So the city is vertical as well as horizontal. Ground level, mid-level suspended buildings, and then higher up, near the ceiling, more structures just hanging in the dark. The whole thing sways a little, all the time, like a boat. It's chaotic and kind of unstable looking, which feels right to me. A city built by desperate people over a long period of time should not look designed. It should look like it survived. So yeah, that is the underground city. Started with a cool image, spent way too long figuring out the logistics, and ended up with a lot of story material I was not expecting. If you want to follow the manga and actually see the city in the story, the link is on the screen. And if you think my physics do not make sense, which might be possible, let me know in the comments. I'm open to a better explanation, if you can think of one, but you can't. There's a lot more world building to cover in future videos, and honestly the next one gets into something I think is even more interesting than the city itself. What are the people inside the city actually hiding from? Not from below, from above. What is on the surface that made their ancestors go this far into despair? Subscribe so you do not miss it. See you in the next one.